Hello Facebookers, it's Steve Barrett here from PRWeek. We're just about to do our weekly podcast. Great guest this week, Andy Pharoah, VP of Corporate Affairs and Strategic Initiatives from Mars. Andy, welcome. Great to have you here.
Good to be here.
Been a long time planning this, looking forward to chatting. And we've got Frank Washkuch here, our news editor. Well, Frank, you've been promoted.
Yes,
congratulations.
yes, thank you.
You are now
Appreciate
our
it.
news director.
Yes.
And also across MM&M. So
Yes.
congratulations, my friend.
Got a lot to learn, lot of work to do. Getting my hands dirty.
I see it more as you spreading your magic across to another brand. So congratulations, well
That's
deserved.
right. Thank you.
So yeah, leave some comments, please. Nice ones, preferably, and let us know what you think of the discussion. And we're about to get going. Hello and welcome to the PR Week, PRWeek's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of PR and marketing. My name's Steve Barrett. I'm the editor-in-chief of PRWeek. Going to guide you through 25-30 minutes of conversation and discussion on some topical stories. And we've got a brilliant guest for you this week, as all our guests are brilliant, but particularly good this week. It's Andy Pharoah, VP of Corporate Affairs and Strategic Initiatives at Mars. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Another Brit working in America, so always good to talk to a fellow Brit. And how long have you been in the States?
I've been in the States since the end of 2009, and I actually became American at the end of last year, but I was allowed to keep my accent.
Yes, I noticed that. That's good to hear. So, well, congratulations. And our American citizen, Frank Washkuch.
Yeah, I've been trying to lose my accent for years.
We like your Scranton accent,
Yes.
Frank. It's a constant joy to have you on the show. And newly promoted Frank Washkuch,
Yes.
News Director, PRWeek, and MM&M now. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great reward for some great work over the years, building the news effort on PRWeek and the Breakfast Briefing, and being a star of these podcasts. So congratulations.
I can't claim to be the star, but thank you. I appreciate it
Come on,
nonetheless.
don't be shy. Anyway, we're going to talk to Andy. Lots going on in the world of comms and marketing, and so many things to talk about. Davos this week has been interesting, hasn't it? We haven't had the president's address yet. That will be very interesting. We'll talk about that. Procter & Gamble has been talking about its marketing budgets again, and we'll see whether the trends that they're exhibiting there are things we can see as a sign of what's going to be ahead in the next 12 months. The Edelman Trust Barometer is always launched around the time of Davos, so we'll see what that had to say. And YouTube has been making some changes to its platform and the way it treats influencers, etc. We'll talk about that, and a little bit of Super Bowl just to finish us off. Andy, let's start with you. Your title is interesting. It's VP of Corporate Affairs and Strategic Initiatives. So tell us what that involves.
Okay, so I think corporate affairs is what people would understand.
Sure,
It's all communications, internal, external, government affairs, brand PR would fit in with that, working very closely with marketing. So that's the corporate affairs, and that's a good function. Strategic initiatives is something that we have at Mars, which it does really three things. The first thing it does is it actually works with the leadership team and the board to essentially make sure that we are making the best use of the time we spend together. The second thing it does is essentially it helps codify what the enterprise transformation strategies are, and it maps the progress against them and taking them through in effect a stage gate process to make sure that the things that we've decided as priorities for the business and that require multi-functions to deliver are getting the appropriate focus. And then the third thing it does on some of those, it actually program manages some of those transformations, and it's a role that I've done at Mars now for 18 months. I had the corporate affairs role at Wrigley was evolved to a similar role from about 2014 onwards. I think it does demonstrate that I think communications and corporate affairs really truly has come of age. It's not a junior function. It's a function that can truly make a difference and is fundamental to the business. And there is a great deal of comfort with it playing an increased role in the organisation.
Yeah, that is interesting and good to hear, because really, if you think of communications as the liquid that sort of infuses the whole organisation, it would make sense to. So does that mean you get a lot more C-suite CEO time than before, or did you always have that? And do you cross pretty much every part of the business, and how do you work with marketing within that?
Yeah, obviously I report to our CEO. And this role has always reported to the CEO. It sits on the leadership team, and is very active with the board. So I think it doesn't change how often you interact. I think it changes the range of things that you interact on, and it very much it's around business leadership with a corporate affairs specialism. But it's really that way around. Very close partnership with Andrew Clark, who is our Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Customer Officer. There's lots of things that we work very closely together with on whether it be around consumer brands or around the corporate brand. So it's a very strong partnership. But that's cultural.
Yeah.
Honestly, Mars is built on strong partnerships, and you're not successful if you can't collaborate across the range of functions. So the relationship with Andrew would be similar with other people.
Do you see that role in many other corporations, companies, or is it?
Well, obviously you had at IBM.
Yeah. Sure. John Watson.
John Watson, you had that role there. So I think it's a coming area. It doesn't take very much from helping people decide how to say something to the further step of actually saying, well, actually, what should we be saying? What should the decisions we be making? And I think if you look at it, a lot of the core skills, particularly around crisis management, where the job of crisis management is actually to get the right people in the room and force a decision to be made and then to clearly communicate that. And that actually applies to pretty much all of business life. So I think there's some areas where communicators actually have some natural skills that they can use to play a much broader role in the direction of the company. And I think companies are operating in a very different world. I mean, we'll talk about this perhaps in a minute, but I think it is forcing companies to be much more confident about the conversations that it has externally, and they are material to business success.
So we had someone you probably know, Pete Marino, who's at Miller Coors, and he's taken on a business role at Miller Coors where he's actually running a division. And when he was on the podcast, we were kind of talking about why don't more communicators kind of rise up from the CCO role into more business C-suite positions? Do you think this strategic initiatives role is a way that you could see an upward path more easily into a C-suite function?
Well, ours is a C-suite function. So if you look at it that sense,
but almost into a sort of running a
P&L. I mean, look, Pete is a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
He's been an entrepreneur. I've known him since the first day I came to the US, and he has been an entrepreneur, and that is what has driven him. And so I think what's happened at Miller Coors is probably more to do with Pete than it is to do with, is it possible? There are people who have moved through, corporate affairs into very senior business leadership roles. I think the most famous one of them would be John Fallon at Pearson. Who was a corporate affairs person who moved on to become chief executive.
There's Ken Frazier at Merck, who was public affairs and is now the CEO, which is a great...
Yeah, so look, I think that the world becomes much more open, and I think it's much more open for people to progress, and I think there are far fewer barriers. The boundaries of where one function begins and ends are really kind of blurring, so I think there are lots more opportunity, but I think it's really about aspiration. What do people want to do? And I think there should be no more reason why people from marketing could go into that kind of P&L role than somebody with a stronger communications background. I think I think it's much more open.
Yeah. So talking more in the PR realm, you brought something in towards the end of last year where you were testing out giving PR firms global roles for the first time. I think you worked with Freud's, Omnicom, PR Group, Edelman and Weber. Four of the biggest names, I guess, in the global PR world. So, first of all, tell us why you did that and how it works, and then maybe it's still fairly new, but how's it sort of working out?
All right, so good questions. So Andrew Clark and I, sort of really at the beginning of last year, said, look, we believe that PR needs to play a bigger role. Our PR buy and our PR relationships were almost entirely tactical and on a market basis. And I don't want to be unfair to the people doing the work, but they were not sitting at this brand strategic table. And so we began a process of saying, okay, let's look at what we could test in terms of bringing PR to that top table. Our view, both Andrew and my view, was that PR could play a very strong role. And so what we've come out with is a pilot. I think it will take a good couple of years to see how it works. But we're essentially testing a number of things. We are testing the idea of actually having a one Omnicom approach on a brand.
Right.
Everywhere.
All the agencies.
Omnicom.
Not
Omnicom.
just PR.
Omnicom everywhere.
Right.
We are then testing with both with Weber and with Edelman, essentially giving an agency that's got some market relationships, also giving them a global role. So they'll have a global role. They'll also got some market relationships based on the business they have already. There's no change there. And seeing what does one everywhere make a difference to versus one and partial. We'll also then be testing where. Like with Freud's, where the agency only does the global role. So there are three things. And then the other thing we will test is PR-led creative.
Oh, okay.
And actually, and I'm not able to give any more details on that, but on a couple of the tests we're going to do is actually where we put PR the PR agency as the lead discipline. And essentially as an alternative support model.
So that would be working with the marketing team as well as the communications team.
Yes, of course. I mean, all of this is kind of team agnostic. Mm-hmm. But particularly when you look at some of the smaller brands, when you look at brands that could be more niche, what is the opportunity to take different approaches to get cut through? And I think fundamentally, good ideas don't only reside in one type of agency or one type of function, and so really, we want the power of the idea to win, and let's see what we learn from it. And we believe in long-term partnerships. The people we picked are all people who have been long-term partners with Mars in many different guises, and so we'll see what we learn from it. But it's I think an exciting step forward.
It's kind of a holy grail for the PR agencies. That's what they've been asking for and saying, look, give us more, we can do more. But it has been difficult for them to get that FaceTime with the CMO and also get access to the budgets, which with the best will in the world are bigger in marketing than they are in communications.
Yeah, I mean, and I believe very strongly that the budgets for the brand should stay in the brand, and one has to be, again, discipline agnostic. Truly looking at what will give you the best return. So I think it's a very exciting pilot. It's been great to partner with Andrew on it, and I think we'll learn some great things from it. And inevitably, some things will go well, some things won't go well, and we'll pick the best and we'll move forward with them.
Yeah, we'll chat about this a bit more when we come to Procter & Gamble, because it's a similar discussion, different environment, obviously. And Freud's is an interesting one in that they're not one of the big global firms. They've tried various things in the US, and they acquired Brooke Hovey's firm, I think.
Brew, is it Brew?
Yeah, that's right. So what was the thinking there? Was that just, I guess you've got one independent but the biggest agency in the world, you've got one holding company but not the biggest holding company, and then you've got the Omnicom PR group with multiple agencies, and then you've got Freud's, which has more of an independent feel to it but has some scale.
I mean, candidly, what we did was we looked at agencies that we already had very strong relationships with. So all of these agencies we had strong relationships with. We went and talked with all of them. We looked at what they had to offer, and it really was chosen on the basis of an element of trust. Knowing that we work with these, we know that they can do good work because they do good work for us, and then looking at ideas and approaches that they brought to us in a pitch process last October.
Great. Well, we look forward to seeing how that rolls out. It's a fantastic case study for the industry and for the general industry in general. And just finally, people think of Mars and candy, but there's a lot more to Mars than that. There's the pet food department. Just give us a scale of some of the brands that maybe people don't automatically associate.
Well, actually, Mars's biggest business is pet care.
Yeah, and that's probably not realised by everybody.
And within that, of the 110,000 people we employ globally, 50,000 of them work in veterinary care. Right. So we have 2,000 veterinary hospitals, primarily in America. Something like 70,000 people overall in pet care, and pet care is by far our largest business. we've got, and within that you've got emerging businesses like Wisdom Panel, which is essentially DNA testing for dogs. It's a 23andMe for dogs.
Oh wow!
We have Whistle,
woof, woof.
which is the equivalent of a Fitbit for dogs. So you can both track activity, also GPS tracking if you can't find where your dog is, and there is obviously the potential actually to link activity with genetics and health and food. So the potential to actually do personalised diet based on activity and breed and medical conditions. So it's that pet care side is very. Now obviously we have a very big confectionery business, the Mars chocolate brands and the Wrigley gum brands, and that the Mars Wrigley confectionery business we put together last year is a very real powerhouse in confectionery, and we love it dearly. And then we have a food business, which is we've got a big organic brand called Seeds of Change, Uncle Ben's Rice, and then in Europe people will know of Dolmio. It doesn't really play so much in the US marketplace. So you've really got three significant segments, all doing different interesting things. I mean, if you look last year, we were quite active. We acquired VCA, Veterinary Clinics of America, so we essentially doubled the size of our veterinary business through VCA. We've announced a partnership with Kind towards the end of last year. We also acquired Tasty Bite, sort of Indian organic natural food brand, into our food segment. So it's very much a fast-moving business and an exciting place to be.
Very much so, yeah. Well, great stuff. Good to find out about that, Andy. Frank, let's talk about Davos.
Yes,
well, first of all, we've got a question. Perry, behind the dials. Let's have your question from viewers.
So we have a quick question for you, Andy. Maria Norwood asks, what criteria do you use to measure effectiveness in order to make the decision as to which ideas to move forward with?
In general, well, I mean, for the agencies, we looked really at, we assessed ideas on creativity, our confidence that they could be done, and our belief that they could be scaled across many markets. So that was the assessment we made. We more generally I suppose
because comms is always accused of not being able to measure what it does, and marketers have always apparently been able to measure much better what they do. I might take issue with that, but that's the conundrum for PR pros, isn't it? So
I mean, we're very much focused on reach, even in marketing. Marketing, we're focused on quality reach. How you essentially assess copy quality, and then how often do we get it to people that matter? And we take the same approach with PR. We actually take the same approach with our corporate brand. So, for instance, last year, we increased 2.5 times our impressions, our reach of our corporate brand messages over 2015. So really
media impressions are still a measurement that have validity.
We believe so. Certainly with our corporate brand. I mean, with our corporate brand, there is relatively low awareness of Mars as it truly is, and generally to know Mars is to love Mars. And so if people become more familiar, you certainly improve impressions. And certainly from a marketing point of view, all the work that we've done with single source data, says that it's about simply getting great copy that motivates in front of people.
And can you link that to sales?
Yes, absolutely.
M&Ms and
single source, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for advertising, it needs to be in the market for 3 months, but you can actually track. And then we have a copy star rating thing where you can at what level advertising expenditure pays off, and we're looking to have at any time something like 80% of our spend behind 3 or 4 star copy. You're never going to be 100 because you've always got to be testing stuff out there, and you never truly know whether copy is going to work until people see it.
When you say copy, what does that encompass?
Copy can be anything from digital, it's creative
content,
yeah.
A 30-second spot,
digital, yes,
influencer work, or
I mean, it's more around advertising in its traditional sense, and so from a PR point of view, we're looking at the messages, message delivery to key audiences.
Okay, let's get on to Davos.
Yes,
Frank. talk us through what are the big themes this week? What are the trends we've been seeing? And we've had a lot of coverage of it. It seems like business is fairly bullish at the moment, especially U.S. businesses, U.S.-based businesses. What are you seeing?
Well, the president has landed, and he is going to speak to the movers and shakers, if you will, at Davos tomorrow.
I believe he's given an interview to Piers Morgan, his old friend from The Apprentice.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. Piers Morgan, who never quite totally hit it off in the U.S.
I don't know, I'm not sure he
Unlike the two
totally
of you,
hit it off in the UK either, to be honest. But
I think he may take issue with that.
he's a polarising figure,
He
I
is.
think.
Anyway, so there is a lot of people are watching to see if some of the attendees walk out of his speech tomorrow. According to courts, that could be an issue. There's another consensus out there you see in the business press that while a lot of the world leaders and business people don't like Trump personally, they're happy with his business agenda. So I think everybody will be looking to see what he says tomorrow, and that will be the thing people will remember about Davos 2018, probably.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Whatever he is, he's box office, isn't he?
Right.
So he's going to be the headlines. I guess it's how his sort of America First message goes down in terms of American branding around the world. I mean, it seems to be going down reasonably well in the US.
Yeah, it's a bit of a calm story at Davos just happened as we've been in here, and that yesterday the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin, said that a weak dollar was pretty much good for the country, good for business. And now Trump has said at Davos that he was misinterpreted and the dollar is going to get stronger and stronger. So everybody being on the same message is not this White House's strongest suit.
That's well put, Frank. Yeah.
So another thing to watch.
Andy, from Mars's point of view, obviously Davos is a place for CEOs. I think you were telling us you can't actually even go unless your CEO's signed up to it. Although I guess you could play around the fringes. But so what's Mars's approach been to Davos? And you're obviously not there. So, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we took a decision a number of years ago that we didn't see it as primarily the place we wanted to play. I think there are lots of organisations and places where you can play. We put a lot of focus ourselves into the UN Climate Week. We see that as a real opportunity to influence the agenda around something that we care about. Our CEO Grant's on the board of the Consumer Goods Forum, and we've taken a leading role in some human rights work there. So I think it's just about essentially about making your choices about where you want to invest your time. I mean, I think WEF does do some very powerful work. We have been involved in a number of WEF events outside of Davos, whether it be in regions or
World Economic Forum is where we
organise it. Yeah. And I think often the themes they discuss are very on point. But I think it's a place people have a conversation. It's not the only place that the conversation needs to take place. For me, the interesting thing on Davos this year is the extent to which politicians are looking to play in it. And interestingly, if you also then look at the extent to which business is looking to play in UN Week, it's almost as though people are crossing over into each other's playgrounds.
Yeah, that's true. That's happening in so many areas, isn't it? But it's interesting, getting involved in the climate debate. How do you balance? Every communicator now has, especially with a big corporation, has to be ready to get involved in the political debate or social debates that come up. You might be tweeted about, for example, if you make an acquisition or if you close a plant or you open a plant, you're becoming part of, and then you're getting involved in climate debates where there's a particular school of thought abroad with this administration. So as a communicator, how has that changed over the last 18 months and how do you navigate some of those very tricky issues?
Yeah, I mean, it is very. I think it's been an interesting challenge. I think the first change, and I think it's not just the past 18 months, but maybe the past few years, is that the news cycle is now 2 hours. You have 2 hours to respond to a story, or it goes on and develops without you and without your opinion. Sometimes that's fine, but more often than not, it's fine. So it's not. So I think that speed. And for organisations to have speed, you need a couple of things. One, you need empowered individuals. You need people who are able to make a call.
Without having to refer to a lawyer, for example.
Yeah. So when we made a call on when Donald Trump's son tweeted on Skittles, we made a call with no consult. It wasn't. As a communications function, we made a call. We responded quickly. We got ahead of the story.
Just for those who weren't aware of that story, what
this was during the election campaign when Donald Trump Jr. said that the Syrian refugee problem was like Skittles. If I told you there were 3 poison Skittles in a bowl, would you still take a handful? And
I would, for the record. But.
And so we quickly responded and basically said, it's not a good analogy. Refugees are people. Skittles is a candy, and we responded quickly on that.
Very well, actually.
But had we not responded quickly, we would have lost it. So I think speed and the ability, to pick stuff up, people to be empowered, and then I think you need a framework, and we have a framework determining of what we will be active on, what we will respond to, what will we be proactive on, and essentially what is material from us. And for us, climate is material.
When you responded to that, and I remember that during the election, when you responded to that, I feel like you got less backlash than, say, a Carrick did with their situation with, saying they were going to cancel ads on Hannity, then sort of walking that back. I feel like you guys didn't get a huge backlash from
that. No. I mean, there were some people who felt it was the wrong thing to say, but overwhelmingly, it was positively received because essentially we don't want to issues market. It's very easy to drive coverage, and we were very clear. We didn't respond from the Skittles page. We didn't respond in the Skittles manner. We responded corporately, quickly, strongly. But speed was what killed ability to take decisions. Similarly, on when the story broke on Thanksgiving Day about the latest problems with YouTube, we again made a decision very quickly. We pulled our advertising globally, communicated that within that 2-hour window, essentially got ahead of things. So I think speed and being able to get ahead of things, having a framework to determining what you're going to stand on for and what. And we've got a very clear point. We don't get involved in politics. We get involved in policy. We have some clear issues that we believe are important. They're important to the future of our business, important to the future of the planet, and we will consistently state our point of view. And we had some quite clear views, I'd say, on immigration. We didn't go chasing after it. If someone had come to us, we'd have said what our view was, what we were doing about it, and we understood why we were doing it. And I think it's just have a framework, empower people to use it, and then go forward confidently. It is a benefit of being a private company. We didn't have to worry about what would happen with the share price the next day, and we've been consistent. But on climate, the scientific evidence didn't change in November 2016. All that changed was the president of the US. Climate is real. The threat to climate is really very threat to. Cocoa. If you want to have cocoa in the future, you're going to need to do things around climate. So it's material. It's key ingredient. Issues like human rights, issues like income. There are real issues that you have to face into, and you can't follow the particular whatever is the flavour of the day.
How do you balance, because you're a truly global company, something like the environment is much more of an issue in Europe than it is in the US. People seem to feel a lot more strongly about it, but you've got to have a joined-up global message, not just on the environment, but on lots of issues where there'll be totally different views. So how do you sort of navigate that?
I mean, again, it's part of the framework we said. You've got to be principles-based. You cannot have one view in one country and a different view in another country. Yeah. You need to be as willing to talk to the American government as the Chinese government, as the Russian government. And you can't just be bold where you think it's okay to be bold. You've got to be willing to be. Now, you may have different ways of doing it, but it's about, and again, you've just got to be consistent. And I think if you are consistent, and if you can point to, why you believe this, why you do it, and that people can't say, well, over here you do this and over there you do that. Actually, people give you a lot more credit. I mean, the worst thing that you can try to do is try either to just sit in the middle of a road on every issue or seek to offend no one. Because if you seek to offend no one, you will offend everyone.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we could talk about this a lot, actually. I mean, it's fascinating company that touches so many elements of what we write about. Let's move on to Procter & Gamble. Frank, why are they in the news this week? Was it their financial results where this came out? Or was it
No, it's that they are looking to cull more agencies out of their global agency roster. So I just wrote down a couple of numbers because they're pretty astounding when you think of the sheer scope of it. So
this is the biggest advertiser or marketer in the world.
But they had 6,000 different agency relationships, which is kind of mind-blowing. So they've already knocked that down to 2,500, and they are looking to cut that in, I believe, about half again. And they have saved $750 million in production costs already. They're looking to do about $400 million more when they cut another half of that. So, I mean, just a huge number, a huge amount of money they're saving through this.
Yeah, and it has implications for the holding companies because obviously a lot of those agencies will be holding companies. I saw that WPP this week merged quite a few agencies into one, actually, around the sort of branding area, I think. So it is, how much of this, Andy, is driven by P&G's specific situation or shareholder activism, and how much of it is driven by people thinking, actually, you know what, we've been paying too much on marketing for a number of years. We saw the sort of media palooza a couple of years ago when people realized that they could do things a lot more automated fashion, and maybe they would not being ripped off in the past, but they weren't being told necessarily the whole story. What do you take from this, and what's the situation at Mars?
I mean, I think from the P&G story, I think there are probably three things going on here. The first one is there is an evolution of marketing. There's an evolution of relationships with agencies. There is an evolution of what are the best channels, and so that is a constant. We ourselves this last week announced that we were going to consolidate media buying. There's nothing unusual.
And you're going to bring more of it in-house?
No, it's actually consolidating media buying agencies around the world. Just from 2 to 1, I think, or maybe from 3 to 1. So that's the first thing you're getting there. I think the second thing is you're looking is that that there is huge disruption. And the business model of many large CPGs is really under threat. So you've got disruption in the marketplace in terms of how consumers are interacting, the ability for small brands to grow and get direct to consumer through e-commerce. You see that. You also see the active investor coming in, and you see P&G under huge pressure, to deliver better financial returns. You saw activist investors trying that with Unilever. You've seen it with Nestle, and so the effort to drive margins. I think that is that is driving some of this.
Is that another area where it's a benefit to be a private company?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yes, I mean, it's obviously you're not going to have an external activist. I think you have to look at things in the same way, though, to an extent, because if the economics of your competitors changes and if they have more efficiency, they also have more money to invest. It doesn't all return to shareholders. So I think with P&G, it's those mix of things that's going there. And I mean, was it David Ogilvy? He said many years ago, half of my advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half, and I think there's an ever increasing focus to try and get to the bit that is wasted. I think the other thing that you also are seeing...
that quote has been attributed to so many people.
Was it Lord Lever?
Lord Levy, whom I think
maybe I'm wrong.
Who probably first...
Maybe Lord Lever to Ogilvy as their agency.
Brits usually say Ogilvy because he was kind of one of ours, but actually was, I think it might have been...
You should point out this, too. It's not the only reason P&G was in the news this week. So they had to deal with a hoax that they were canceling Tide Pods, doing away with the line.
That story we spoke about last week with Rob Gronkowski.
Well, this is the new step of it, and that there was a hoax on social media that Tide was doing away with the Pods line. So they had to write a long blog post explaining that they're sticking with the line but committed to product safety.
Yeah, it was an interesting week for the Gronk, wasn't it? Were you sad to see him get injured in the... Anyway.
Next question. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Well, look, I think I would say about it is how do you look at the Super Bowl when both teams are the bad guy? That's a great question. We'll get it. This is a whole other podcast. So anyway.
Yeah, look, it's been a great discussion, actually. We are running over. So let's get on to the Edelman Trust Barometer. Frank,
yeah.
They always actually launch that at Davos.
Right.
And they've sort of made a bit of a brand of it in itself, haven't they? And it seems to fit with what goes on there. But what's it saying this year? And a really interesting year to analyse.
Yeah, and we should say too, the trust barometer is really one of the rare industry things that gets wide mainstream coverage.
Yeah.
I think Richard Edelman was on CNBC, I think Monday morning.
Yeah, and Martin Sorrell was talking about the trust barometer, which must
Yes.
have irked him a little bit.
Yes, one thing I always watch from Davos is who is dressed for the weather when they're on set at CNBC.
How was Richard looking, Richard Edelman?
He had his suit and tie on.
Okay.
Very, very sharp as always.
Well,
we should
he's
say.
newly
And,
sharp. He newly
yes.
sharpened character, yeah.
Martin Sorrell was dressed more for the conditions, more looking like.
Oh, he didn't have his shorts on when I interviewed him in Cannes.
I would hope not. No. But that's something that gets wide mainstream coverage, and they've done a good job, I think, making a real brand out of it, so to speak. What it shows this year is plummeting trust across the board in U.S. institutions. That's especially in the media, but government, NGOs, corporations, things like that. And a big issue is the fake news problem, in that no one has really gotten to the root of this, of how to deal with it, how to get around it, how to go straight at it, whatever the case is. So yeah, I mean, I think it really has reflected a lot of what we and a lot of other people have been covering, I think, day to day and week to week over the past year, and that there's just this erosion of normal trust standards. So to
A
speak.
lowering of it for some years now. It's been saying that people trust people like me or
Right.
people like them.
Right.
But that seems to be slightly reversed this year. What's causing that?
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it seems that people are trusting more of the experts, so to speak. Another thing was that it pointed out how journalists are in many ways more trusted than they were before, even though trust in the media itself has gone down.
I just didn't get that. I mean,
Well,
I don't understand.
So
how
what
that
they
can
say
be.
it points to is that there's distrust in platforms, so to speak. So there's distrust in, whether it's CNN as a brand or cable television as a brand or, so digital media as a brand. So there's distrust in that category, but with individual people, it's a little different.
Yeah, there was a double-digit increase in the credibility of journalists, but media is the least trusted global sort of institution. What do you take from that, Andy, those two facts on the media? Because obviously key interface with communicators of all types.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do differentiate between I think media. I think people are talking platforms. I think they're talking social. I think they're talking fake news. I think people like people, and and so I think so you see increased credibility of people who appear to kind of like tell it like it is. For me, the most interesting on the trust one, I think Richard came up with a brilliant quote. Is that really. We cannot expect as business that we're just going to have a benign environment for the next 50 years. And I think if you look at really from the 50s onwards, broadly for business, there was a benign environment where business could flourish. I think that the assumption that it will be benign going forward is under threat. And so if you don't speak up, you may very well be living in a world that not only are you uncomfortable as an individual in, but actually a world that your company cannot be successful in or cannot be as successful in it. So I think there is a real need to speak up, and that's it. I see that as a real theme that came through from what I've read about Davos, but from what I see that we're talking about, what I see many companies are talking about.
So let's play devil's advocate on that. What do you say to those who would say, no, business is there to make money for its shareholders, and that's pretty much its sole, because that's kind of, it's gone that much more that way in the past 25 years, hasn't it? What would you say to those people?
I would say that the only way that you can make money for your shareholders in the long term is to be attuned to what is happening in society. And if you view things on a long-term approach, then you have to create positive societal good. You have to build trust within communities, and certainly if you need to have the right regulatory environment to flourish. I mean, if you go to a world where everything is back to sort of the 13th century, where everything is just inside their city states, it will not be a very prosperous world. And so trade is critically important for
so
business
they're
to
actually
speak out on.
they're part of the same process.
Yes.
bring returns for shareholders, you must.
Yeah, you must.
Have interesting. All right, let's talk about YouTube, Frank.
Yeah.
They made some changes this week. What's that all
interesting
about?
stuff. So, and Andy, you mentioned YouTube and Google and advertising with them earlier. So they've made changes basically to really more legitimize who can make money from YouTube, who can make money from being an influencer on their YouTube preferred channel. And they have raised the bar in terms of how many followers and the frequency of followers you have to participate in their advertising program. So there are interesting implications for the folks that we cover, in that it could be the end of the quote-unquote micro-influencer, which are the people that have really small niche audiences but are very influential with them. So some of them are already...
It has implications for PRWeek, because I don't think we are in this threshold above that. So, it's, I guess you could call us not a micro-influencer. I'd like to think of us in bigger terms than that. But, it's a good... What is the traffic? I've put you on the spot now, haven't I? What is the traffic threshold now?
I'm not sure,
Okay.
if I'm being totally honest with you. But it's considerably higher than it was before. And the
Moving
folks
to 10,000, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the folks that we've talked to have some concerns in that, look, they were making money when they first launched. Some of them became wildly popular on their YouTube channels right after they launched it. And then they saw a lot of pullback in terms of how much money. So they're talking about going to trying out other platforms, and something we'll keep an eye on.
Yeah, Andy, is YouTube in danger of killing the goose that laid the golden egg here? You talked about brand safety and the fact that you've actually moved all your brands off YouTube for the time being, and you're not alone in that. And then there's this issue where they're trying to kick off smaller players. What do you think of what YouTube's doing, and as a brand, what would you like to see them do?
Well, actually, we are very happy with what they're doing, because one of the things that they're doing is by being more careful about where they're placing programmatic, they're much more able then to actually properly monitor.
Right.
And that's the problem that we faced. We found that us and a number of companies, we were finding our brands being placed programmatically, electronically, in places that we did not want our brands to appear. It got to such a stage that on Thanksgiving we pulled it, and we said, you know what, we're pulling it until we can have some much better brand safety in there. And
Nice.
so what YouTube announced from our perspective last week was actually
of that process.
positively, and we have now a pathway to going back on YouTube in the next couple of months through programmatic, because we can have a greater safety. So we view this entirely through a different lens. As we just don't want our brands appearing next to stuff it shouldn't be appearing against.
No.
And you need people to look.
Yeah,
at
okay, I see the connection now. Do you use micro-influencers, or do they have to have a certain scale before you get involved with them?
Well, I mean, obviously we do programmatic buys, which will, which do appear in front of programs. So yes, we have, of course, with our brands, we would then be using some micro-influencers who we're working with, in a legitimate way, to promote and to test brands. So yeah, I mean, of course, it's an incredibly important part of advertising. We are now at over 30% expenditure of is in digital, over 40% when it comes to pet care.
Right.
So it's important. But
There's a lot of dogs on the internet. Yeah.
There are. Oh, very good.
And more cats.
Yeah.
Well, we should mention that Grumpy Cat.
Yeah.
This week got a $700,000 payout. Did she not? I know you're a big fan of that story, Frank. I can see from
It's the real hard news why people come to PRWeek.com.
It's what people want. Yeah.
We'll be putting up a poll very shortly,
Good.
and you can vote on PR Week's website about what Grumpy Cat should be
Will
spending.
that be a poor poll, Frank? Okay.
Okay, we'll be, and you can vote on where Grumpy Cat should spend her winnings.
Yes, exactly. We bring you all the big stories here on PR Week. Listen, Andy, great chat. Couldn't let you go without just chatting briefly about the Super Bowl. It's a week on Sunday. No doubt you'll be doing a bunch of stuff. M&M's, M&M, that's our brand. M&M's, and what have you. What can you tell us beyond Well, what can you tell us?
I'm going to tell you. I mean, so we're doing an ad that we will know will win the best Super Bowl ad.
Because
it's the only advert that's being entirely made just for one person. And only one individual in California will see it. So that is Skittles doing. David Schwimmer will be in it, but the only person that will see it will be the particular individual in California.
Wow.
So in the category of best adverts for one, that will be the best advert for one, beyond doubt. And then M&M's will be on the, for everyone, M&M's has an advert. Danny DeVito will be in it. Expect more next week.
Now, are you going to Minneapolis?
No.
But I'm guessing you have a bunch of folks on the ground there.
Oh yeah, I mean obviously we would have people at the Super Bowl.
Yeah. From somebody in your role, what's the big advantage to actually being on the ground? Maybe not at the game, so to speak, but having something in the city around the stadium when the game is happening.
I mean, I think it's all about extending the brand moment, and it's about building shareable content, and and really truly connecting yourself with the event, and I think particularly doing things that become shareable. As you do things that are shareable, you extend the experiential.
Will you have a bunch of teams monitoring it for social opportunities, and will they be in-house or will they be agency or a mixture?
It's a mixture of agency and in-house. I mean, obviously, we did have a couple of years ago when Marshawn Lynch was in the Super Bowl.
Sure,
he was a great ambassador.
He was. That was brilliant
for Skittles.
Real earned media.
It really was truly earned media. So I mean, it
would have been better, of course, if Seattle actually gave him the ball on the 1 yard line at the end of the one game. But that's a totally different thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, listen, Andy, it was great to chat across a number of topics, and we look forward to following how those relationships, agency, the new experiments work out, because that's fascinating, and it's really where we want to see, from the PR industry's point of view, where we'd love to see things develop. So great to find out more about that.
Right.
Couple of customer service announcements before we go. We've got our Brand Film Festival. You've got until January 29th to get your entries into that. Do get your best brand films in. I hope Mars is putting some in. That will all culminate in a gala screening in May at the Paley Media Centre. Great initiative that, doing that with our sister brand campaign. Global Awards are also out there for submissions. January the 31st is your deadline for that. And then we have our big US Awards night on March the 15th in New York City. So do get your tickets for that before they sell out. But we've gone over time a bit, but I hope you enjoyed the discussion. I thought it was fascinating. That's all we got time for now. We'll see you next time on the PR Week.